What does it mean for something to be racist? And can a person of colour ever be racist toward a white person? This has become a rather vexed question recently, with Sam Kerr being accused of racism. Sam Kerr, of course, was Australia's women's soccer captain, and she played for Chelsea before an injury. Sam Kerr is of Indian heritage. She's been accused of calling a police officer a, quote, stupid white bastard during a drunken altercation with a taxi driver over a fare in which she had thrown up in that taxi cab. She denies using these words and insists that she called the police officer a, quote, stupid white cop. She's been charged under British law, which forbids using language that is intended or is likely to harass or alarm a person. The argued racial component would be an aggravating factor which could exacerbate any punishment if she is found guilty. In a prior video, I covered the legality of this situation. Now, to be clear, Sam Kerr has pleaded not guilty and she denies any wrongdoing. I do not prejudge this case, and more facts undoubtedly will emerge over time. Sam Kerr is entitled to the presumption of innocence. And hereafter, I will be primarily speaking in hypotheticals and generalizations. I am not forming any fixed view of Sam Kerr unless and until she's had her day in court and we have more facts. And as I've indicated, I've discussed some of the law surrounding this in a prior video. The question, however, is whether calling someone a stupid white cop or something to that effect could be racist in general. Now, one argument, of course, is that racism involves an element of power. Racism would arise when a person both A, discriminates against a person on the basis of race or uses racially charged words or conduct, and B, has a position of power over that person. That position of power could be either present, for example, being in a position of authority, or historical, i.e. based on that person's membership of a particular racial category. Therefore, people taking this position would argue that Sam Kerr could not be racist in general because of historical power structures that meant that white people were in a position of power and authority with respect of people of colour. Therefore, whether or not Sam Kerr violated the law, she could not be racist. The alternative argument is that racism simply involves discrimination on the grounds of races. For example, using words, language, or actions, or treating someone differently on the basis of their race. This would be prima facie racism. It is discrimination. It doesn't involve an additional element of alleged power, it's simply discrimination. Therefore, imputing someone's integrity or calling them names on the basis of their race would be racist. Treating someone differently on the basis of the race would be racist. Under this construction, if you were to call a police officer a, quote, stupid white cop, and that person were perhaps going about their job, and that person were investigating what you were doing, then a reasonable person might infer that you're suggesting that police officer was himself racist. They are acting because they are white, and you are a person of colour. That is, you are impugning that police officer's integrity. There's an implication that the conduct is improper, and it is only brought about because of the police officer's race and the fact that the police officer's race is allegedly different from yours. Under this construction, Sam Kerr's comments would seem to be racist, because my interpretation of them is they could implicitly impugn the police officer's integrity. Now, clearly, more facts might emerge at court, and we can't necessarily judge things right now based off of media reports. The court case will determine what exactly was said, to whom, and under what circumstances. However, under this construction, Sam Kerr's comments, if they are as alleged, would be racist. Now, I would posit this second construction is more correct, without levelling any allegation against Sam Kerr herself. If we just take that hypothetical, then the statement would be racist. This is because as soon as we start conflicting power structures, we then have to ask ourselves, well, Sam Kerr is a millionaire. She was the captain of Australia's football team, and she's played for Chelsea. Surely someone that wealthy, that prominent, that successful would have power over a lowly street police officer. Surely the police constable has less societal power than the captain of the national football team. It is nonsensical to allege that the police officer has more power in general. Or what about Rishi Sunak? Rishi Sunak is the Prime Minister of the UK. Surely we're not insisting that Rishi Sunak has less power than a police constable wandering the beat. It simply doesn't make any sense. The only way you can confect that argument is to insist that all white people somehow have more power since time immemorial and forevermore. They're deemed to be powerful, even if the true state of affairs means they're not actually powerful. Even if it means that Sam Kerr has more societal power than this police officer, she still can never be racist under that first construction. It leads to very nonsensical results. It leads to someone as powerful as the football captain being seemingly incapable of racism. That would be absurd. Then we have the issue that it creates a slippery slope. If you accept that racism simply cannot be committed against white people, then it opens up the field to other forms of discrimination. Why would we stop at words? We could proceed to go to conduct, and we could proceed to go to look at hiring or firing or promotion decisions. As soon as we allow racially charged words to be used against white people, then we start being able to discriminate against white people in all manner of other circumstances. It opens the floodgates to discrimination. Now in Australia, such discrimination would clearly violate Fair Work Act Section 351 when used in a work context. But that set of legislation only applies in specific contexts. Under that first construction, that basically means that both A, the Fair Work Act Section 351 shouldn't apply to white people could be discriminated against, but also B, in all of the other contexts, then discrimination seemingly becomes okay. It becomes absurd. There are all manner of other consequences that flow from that nonsensical idea that you can never be racist toward a white person. I would also argue as well, and I've addressed this in a prior video, the law specifically in the United Kingdom, the law does not exclude white people from its provisions. The law never says that harassing behavior is unacceptable, but only if it is against a person of color. It never says that harassing behavior is fine against white people. The law never turns its attention to the implicit power structure, so to speak, that might exist. Therefore, from a legal perspective, whether or not it is deemed to be racism by the media is really actually completely irrelevant, because the law explicitly has considered that racism could be committed by and for and against any race, and it would all be unacceptable under that British law. And if we're going to have laws such as that, they need to apply to everyone. I would also posit that whether or not we call it racism, it's discriminatory anyway. Why is it that discrimination is okay just as long as it's not racism? Discrimination would be okay if it's along the lines of color. That doesn't seem to be any better. Whether or not it is magically labeled racism, it's not okay either way. Discrimination should generally not be accepted. Discrimination should generally not be encouraged. Whether or not we decide to label it a particular thing, I'm not sure why discrimination becomes okay simply because we've twisted ourselves in knots to mangle the English language into labeling it as not technically racist. Discrimination is generally bad, and the argument about whether we label it racist seems to rather miss the point about stopping discrimination, which I will again reiterate is something that the British law has actually taken into account, because they don't focus on whether a thing is racist per se, they focus simply on whether the language is racially charged. But as I've indicated, this whole situation has turned into a rather interesting farce. Now, I want to reiterate that Sam Kerr does deny any wrongdoing. She's innocent until proven guilty. Certainly, more facts could come out over time. More facts could come out at court. The court might determine that her conduct has not violated the law, and we're just basing things on media reports at the time. The final thing I will note, however, is that if we really are going to have these laws over which speech is good, bad, or otherwise, then they must apply to everyone equally. Everyone must be equal under the law. Now, there was an argument about whether these laws should exist, but if they are going to exist, then they must apply to everyone. But do let me know your thoughts about whether Sam Kerr's alleged statements are in fact racist in the comments below. I'd be interested to hear what you think.